To give but one example, there was an incident from when you were 6 or so, when you spilled bacon grease on Vernon, and in response he broke your arm. In his memories, you deliberately attempted to throw hot grease onto him with the intention of burning his face and possibly blinding him, and it was only his quick reactions that saved him from serious injury. The broken arm was the result of self-defense.
That's a lie.
Harry said furiously.
It was an accident, and he wasn't even hurt.
Snape raised his hands again to placate the boy.
No. That, Mr. Potter. With occlumency, I was able to review those images clearly with all emotional context removed, and it was obviously, as you say, a simple minor accident to which Vernon Dursley grotesquely overreacted. But when I reviewed the same memories, without blocking the Muggle's emotional responses, I was nearly overwhelmed by the terror he experienced from what he genuinely believed to be an attempt by you to seriously harm or even disfigure him. In all my years as a Legilimens, I have never encountered any phenomenon quite like this. The only comparable effect I can think of would be when the memories of someone placed under a very sophisticated confundus curse are altered due to the subject's desire to rationalize his own confunded actions. However, this effect, whatever its origins or nature, is much more potent and persistent than any confundus I have ever encountered.
Harry fought to calm himself and to consider what Snape was saying, but a few months of occlumency training were nothing against the fury he felt now. Do you mean to say someone cursed the Dursleys, and that's why they treated me that way all these years? Then his face darkened as he abandoned completely his efforts to control his growing anger.
Was it the Potters?
He spat.
It wasn't enough to dump me off with Muggles. They had to curse those Muggles to fear and hate me. Harry,
said Artie gently.
It's not just the Dursleys.
Harry froze as Artie's words sank in. Artie looked over at Snape, who nodded at him. Then he continued.
Professor Snape also interviewed several of your teachers, your neighbors, and even some of the doctors and nurses who remembered you from when you were injured by the Dursleys and taken to hospital. Understand, these are all people who would have seen and noticed your appearance, and with it the obvious signs of neglect. The teachers and medical personnel were in fact required by Muggle law to report any of the abuse signs you clearly showed to Muggle law enforcement. None of them did. I assumed that the Dursleys bullied them out of saying anything. Harry, your uncle is a mid-level executive at a Muggle drill manufacturing company, and not even in the main office,
said Hesjo.
Your aunt is a stay-at-home mom. Neither of them has the sort of standing to bully a teacher into ignoring child abuse, let alone a doctor or nurse. All of the people Professor Snape examined knew that you were likely being mistreated. Originally, Severus feared that someone might have obliviated them all for some reason connected with your placement with the Muggles. But the truth is, all of them remember you clearly but actively chose not to intervene because...
The witch hesitated, as if grasping for a kind way to say it before realizing there wasn't one.
Because something about you made them recoil in fear and hatred.
Desperate to deny it, Harry tried to summon up a single memory of a Muggle who had ever treated him well. There was a neighbor across the street, Mrs. Fig. She was always fairly nice to me.
She's a squib, Harry,
said Artie.
Arabella Fig was placed there by James and Lily Potter to look out for you. As a squib, she may not have been fully affected, and even she never informed the Potters of how you were being treated, although in her defense she likely did not fully realize the extent of your mistreatment.
Harry struggled to comprehend what all this meant. In his mind, he tried to review every interaction with a Muggle that he'd ever had. Then, he remembered his brief phone conversation with Hermione's mother the previous week, and how surprisingly cold she'd been. This from a woman he'd met exactly once and talked to for less than 30 seconds. He rubbed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose as he fought to regain his self-control. I've never met a grown-up who did anything to help me in any way. He'd told Snape the previous year, and now he knew why.
What's causing this?
He asked in a quiet voice.
What's been done to me? Well,
Said Ted.
I've performed the most thorough diagnostic spells I know, and I can't find any sign of a curse or any other dark magic. The only way to find out anything more than we already have is to go to St. Mungo's, which carries its own drawbacks. Such as?
Harry asked tightly.
Well, first of all, the healers there would almost certainly insist on informing the Potters of anything they find. Second, if the top healers there don't immediately find a cause and a cure, and I'm not confident they will, they'll want to keep running tests until they do find it, which might mean keeping you out of school. Finally, well,
He hesitated for a moment.
St. Mungo's is ministry run, and I'm afraid this might be sufficiently weird enough for the unspeakables to be called in. A wizard who provokes an automatic fight-or-flight response in nearly any muggle who interacts with him for any extended period would probably represent some kind of threat to the statute of secrecy. Your solicitors are bound to confidentiality, as am I, but the St. Mungo's healers would be less so.
So no St. Mungo's then. And suppose.
He said sarcastically, it also means we don't even prosecute the Dursleys because it will raise questions about me that we don't have answers for. He closed his eyes and went through another quick calming routine before the thought of Vernon walking away scot-free caused him to snap. Then he looked up at his mentor. Do you have any thoughts, Professor Snape? The man was silent for a moment before he responded.
Mr. Potter, I am, all modesty aside, an expert on the dark arts. I am more qualified to serve as Dada instructor than anyone who has held that post in at least 20 years. The only reason I never pursued a mastery in dark arts defense is that doing so would require me to reveal to the ministry how many illegal curses and hexes I know, as well as how many I have invented that are not publicly known.
He paused and then shook his head.
And I have never heard of anything remotely like this. It is a mystery and a deeply troubling one, and we must be absolutely cautious as we seek to unravel it. In any case, whatever the source of this malady, it seems to only affect Muggles. While your fellow students and teachers treated you with contempt throughout your childhood, you are presently one of the most popular students in your year, and all of your professors praise you without exception.
The Potters aren't very fond of me.
Harry said ruefully.
James Potter hates everything connected with Slytherin House, a view which predates your birth by at least a decade. His son's views are nothing but a reflection of the father's. Lily Potter's views are more complicated, but it is not my place to explain them.
Harry started to ask Snape about that, but the man's expression made it plain that questions about Lily Potter would not be entertained. Fine, so I can't stay with Muggles, not a problem. Augusta Longbottom offered me sanctuary last Christmas. Can't I go there?
In time. Unfortunately, Lady Augusta and her grandson are abroad and incommunicado for another week. Until then, we need a wizarding household with sufficient warding to protect you against whomever sent the doxy swarm after you. But it must also be one to which James Potter cannot lodge a credible objection, since he still remains your head of house.
Snape hesitated.
I am assuming, of course, that you do not wish to petition the Potters to allow you to move back in with them for the duration.
Harry closed his eyes as he thought through the ramifications of that idea, particularly in light of what he'd just learned. Honestly, the thought of living under the Potter roof right now filled him with equal parts fury and dread.
That assumption would be correct, sir.
He said quietly.
And for a variety of hyper-technical ethics issues that would only bore you.
Said Artie.
You can't just stay with Hestia or with me and Elizabeth or even with the Tonkses, so who does that leave us with?
I have one thought.
Said Snape.
One household that meets our particular needs, and to which James Potter would not object.
Later that afternoon, after the arrangements were all made, Snape apparated himself and Harry, along with the boys' shrunken possessions, to a hideously misshapen multi-story farmhouse in Ottery St. Catchpole. Next to the pathway that led to it was a battered, hand-carved sign that simply said,
The Burrow.
Harry regarded the tottering dwelling before him and then turned to his teacher.
You have got to be joking.